right, we're back on another episode of Covered with the Utah FOP. I am your host, Brett Rawson, here with Brent Jex and Kevin Murray. We are short on time today. Again, in the magic of podcast, we're heading to an important luncheon that we referenced in the last episode, and so we're going to go through some important things here quickly. It is political season. I know that, I can't anticipate when this is going to be released, but I know that in our timeline here in the studio, the GOP is in Iowa, and so by the time this airs, I don't know if we'll be in
February.
So is that New Hampshire? When does New Hampshire happen? I don't have the dates on all this, but it's already a slugfest out there. The media's talking about everything and presidential politics, and I guess Trump's way ahead and all of that. And then what about the Democrat side? It's just the sleepy old man, right? I mean, it's
something.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we talked about how we're not Republicans or Democrats at the FOP. We back those who back us, and but it's.
But I think finally Jimmy Carter's sitting there going, "Finally, I'm not the worst."
I mean, it's hard. I don't care who you are, what your politics are. You look at the President of the United States of America, and all I see is elder abuse. I mean, it's really actually sad. Yeah, it is.
It is sad.
Yeah. And, as far as things are here in the studio today in January, Biden's still running, and I just don't know what the future holds.
Well, hopefully it holds more Bernie Sanders memes of him sitting at the inauguration with his mittens and sitting there. You guys remember that a few years ago?
Yeah. Loved it. Yeah.
Well, and the interesting thing about national politics is how it transcends into state and local. You know, we now, regardless of how you feel about Trump, his cases that he has going are centered around that violation of due process,
right?
And pulling these obscure things out. And
you're talking about out of constitutional law that may or may not even apply to the president, and those sorts of issues, and
those sorts of issues, and business practices, and real estate, and charges that have never been charged before, and
certainly not against a former U.S. president.
Correct. Yeah, and especially in light of some of the prior presidents that we've had. One in particular that.
I was going to say. I mean, I would venture to say that every single president, at least in my lifetime, you could have charged with something.
Yeah, with something.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, Bill Clinton. Love him or hate him, bro, you couldn't come up with a short list of charges. I mean, come on, but we don't do that in America. We don't do that. And it's not that we think that people should be above the law. It's just that there's always been a certain amount of respect for the office, and that is now evaporated.
And here's the interesting thing is that some of the people that have expressed just complete dismay over how that whole thing's gone are some of the same ones that here at the state and sometimes local level that have no problem violating due process for cops, that are, the notion that we would do this to a president keeps them up at night, but then they'll turn around and sign on to legislation that does that very thing to us, and some of the ones that sit there and trumpet the no one's above the law are the same ones that on a traffic stop will utter the words, "Do you know who I am?" I know, I know your chief, I know your sheriff, don't you know that I'm important?
Yeah.
It was like, so is nobody above the law, or is it just some people are above the law, but we call it this? And unfortunately, it's the realm of politics that we go in. And I'm glad that for the most part, we've got some very supportive legislators. Mm-hmm. Part of it is, educating them on how things actually are on the streets. I don't know that always gets communicated to them in the best way through other avenues, But that's one thing that we've always tried to do is, we'll tell them, the one thing that you can guarantee from the FOP is that we're not going to lie to you.
Right.
We're going to tell you how it is.
Yeah.
And if something's not a big deal, we'll tell you it's not a big deal. But we need those basic protections. I mean, it says right in the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, about due process, that no state shall make or enforce a law that violates due process. And every legislative session, we have somebody wanting to run something that either doesn't curb that violation of our due process or tries to expand that violation of due process. And so those are some of the things that we battle every session.
Right.
And so, as all that mulls over to that, and here's the thing, and Kevin, this is probably initially for you to speak on, but when we have those violations of due process, and I've seen it, where cops that really have no business being cops, make a mistake, or maybe it's intentional in some cases, and the agency goes for the low-hanging fruit and doesn't do something thorough, and they just arbitrarily just say, well, we're going to say that the ends justify the means, and we're going to get rid of them. Then steps in the FOP legal plan for FOP members, and they get their job back or they get reinstated because of that violation of due process. And then it's, well, we're just protecting bad cops.
Yeah.
We're just doing this. And it's like, does due process matter or doesn't it? Because if it matters, then we have to take on those fights. And we implore for agencies, please do the right investigation.
Let me speak on part of that because it reminds me of a time that I was in law school. I was probably in my first year, and I called a friend who had been an attorney already for many years. The law for me, I wouldn't call it exactly a second career, but I had done a lot before I actually slowed down enough to make time for law school. And so I had been in the workforce and had friends that had gone on directly to law school and were into their careers several years. I called one of them, and I was talking to him about the fact that he had moved from being a prosecutor into the defense realm in Nevada. And I had questions about, man, how do you do it? Like, how do you move from, being there to go after bad guys, and next thing you know, you've got, scumbags in your office. And he's like, oh yeah, you're new to this. That's cute. And I'm like, what? And I just look back with naivety about who that young man was who was just learning about the law, because it seemed very reasonable to me when he explained very quickly and in just a few words, what do you think I do for a living when I represent the quote unquote bad guys? He says, who do you think I'm representing? Yeah, it's that person, that individual, but what am I standing for? And I'm like, oh, this is a quiz, isn't it? And he says, yeah, answer the question. Like, your professors are going to go through this with you. Like, what am I doing? I said, you're defending the Constitution. And he goes, amen, brother. He says, defense attorneys defend the Constitution of the United States of America and the way that it applies in the lives of the regular citizen. Those rights, that Bill of Rights, that's no small matter. People died for that. People died for this Constitution and this country that we live in and that we hold dear. And the manifestation of those rights, we find ourselves in court sometimes on blood, guts, and semen type cases, not the stuff you want to tell your mom about, but that's where the rights are fought for. And when you look at law enforcement, get away from the average perp walking down the street that needs an attorney. You look at law enforcement officers. Are they any less deserving of the protections afforded by the federal and state constitution? I don't think so.
I think with anything, it just kind of lends more legitimacy to our organization. I never thought on a local level that I would be it turns your stomach sometimes when you get into these positions and you want to be there for the member, but then you find out sometimes the members aren't right. And sometimes they did mess up. And sometimes you don't want to be identified with those guys where you're like, oh, do I really want to wear the same patch as that guy? And so sometimes we do have to defend due process, but that doesn't mean that for that low-hanging fruit that we just make sure that the agency does it the right way. And I think from the admin side, they look at it and they go, this is a fair organization. And that's my goal, is to make sure that we remain a fair organization. That just because you've got somebody that is kind of, the low standard, and that you don't want to wear the same uniform as them, that you preserve their rights and you make sure that they have access to the legal plan, and that they have the representation through the internal affairs, and make sure that they have everything in place, that their rights are intact. And then if they still, going through that due process, have screwed up bad enough that there's a termination, then at least they're not going to get their job back. And
exactly, like we don't have a magic bag of tricks. And if there aren't due process violations, if the agency actually does its job correctly, then I don't have anything but a set of bad facts sometimes. And what do I do with that? Well, sometimes it's ushering somebody into the civilian world. And I've joked sometimes I've taken more badges from officers than any chief in the state, because sometimes all I've got are the bad facts. And I don't have, they didn't step on a landmine with respect to due process. Good on them for doing it right. Mm-hmm. And then what am I left with? Well, you did what to a dispatcher? Like, oh, okay, well, let's be a civilian now.
Yeah. Well, and it's, the career's not cut out for everybody. Mm-hmm. And those that we can save and rehabilitate and things like that, great, let's do it. For those that can't, it's, let's make sure that you have every right afforded to you, and that, like you said, making sure that the agency follows that, because the ends can't justify the means.
Yeah, and you know what? We're really good at our jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say it. I know I've been a little humble over the years. However, we've been doing this how long? Many years now. A decade at least.
Almost 13 years.
Yeah, I mean it's been a long time. I can't even remember now, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of IAs, and more than a couple hundred officers in OICIs. Yeah, which is incredible. When I talk to my colleagues around the nation, I don't know of a shop anywhere in America that has dealt with more officer-involved shootings than our firm.
In fact, I didn't tell you this, but I had a conversation a couple of days ago with one of the Attorney General candidates, Rachel Terry, and she's the Director of Risk Management for the state of Utah. Mm-hmm. And she said that, and I was asking her, why, kind of what prompted her to reach out to the FOP. And she said when she was involved in some hearings down at the prison with our Department of Corrections lodge, and she didn't go into specifics about who the case was or anything, but she said, I saw the passion that your attorneys went into protecting the due process rights and of those members, and she goes, and I remember sitting back and saying, okay, we're on kind of opposite ends of the spectrum on facts and stuff. She's an attorney, obviously, and she said, but I gained a whole appreciation for what the FOP stands for because of how vigorously they defended and protected the rights of the corrections officer that we were dealing with. Mm-hmm. And she said at no point, not that time or in a point since, did she feel like any games were being played.
Right.
But there wasn't any, there was no letting up on the gas pedal.
That's right.
It was, yeah. And she said, I like that organization.
There's no games. You either follow the dictates of the Constitution, which has these very important protections in it, or you don't, or you ignore it, or you violate, in some cases, the rights of the people in front of you. And our job is to make sure that that does not happen. And we have gotten very good at it.
Well, it's just like our jobs out on the road. You know, hopefully we wouldn't sit back and watch somebody that we work with violate the rights of somebody in the community that we're engaged with. I mean, there are countless times where, you know, because emotion can take over and things. You know, how many cops out there listening have had somebody tap you on the shoulder and go, "Hey, I got this."
Yeah.
Or that you've had to go up and say, "Hey, okay, I've got this." You know, we're in the business of watching out for that.
Right.
And so why would we have any less expectation out of our law firm?
Right.
And you guys have been awesome.
Thank you.
Sometimes frustratingly awesome.
Oh yeah, when you get that client that maybe isn't popular, but we're here for the little guy. We're here for that guy that everybody's stepping on, but we have to be that. That's what we exist to help the people that are disenfranchised, and there are those people within our ranks. I often say that, as it's been said many times before, it's a cliche. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and I know that there are organizations that have tried. They've tried to do what we do, and I mean, maybe I'm giving away too much secret sauce here, but there's a reason why we've tried to hire lawyers with at least some law enforcement understanding, if not outright police officers. Then we've got a recent one that spent some time in an operational component in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who was a prosecutor, and he's coming on strong. I had him out on a shooting just last night, and he did a great job. I threw him right into the refiner's fire. I had a couple of clients, and I showed him how to go through it on the first one, and then I turned to him and said, "All right, you're up," and he didn't even hesitate and just jumped right in. He's going to be great. But it's that kind of passion. He already had a passion. He comes from a law enforcement family, and you guys know who I'm talking about. But he's just going to do a great job for us. And so it really comes down to, I think, good recruiting and making sure that that people love these clients. I mean, you don't always find lawyers that love their clients, and I often say that I've got the greatest job in the world because I get to be a defense attorney, which I think is a fantastic job, but I get to do it for the people I care about.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, you talked about other organizations trying to replicate, and we were talking to an FOP attorney in another state that was intrigued by
right.
what we were doing, and he said, "Okay, so we went through the plan." He said, "So anything on duty?"
Yeah.
Yep. Anything administrative? Yep. And off duty? Yep. And all for $310 a year?
Yeah.
Yep. He was like, "I would have to charge at least double that to get that same." He's like, "How are you even making this work?" And it's like, it works.
Yeah.
It works. And when our members get hung up in a thing where, I don't know, maybe other organizations are like, "Hey, either we don't have the money to defend you, or it's a hot topic and we've decided not to let you have access to the attorney," or some other
Yeah, I mean, think about
some
that.
other spectacle that
for less than the cost of one single hour of my time on an annual basis, you get all of that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Kevin?
What are you thinking there? What are you thinking there?
Well,
Kevin?
I've had the opportunity to field quite a few phone calls recently, as you do as the president of an organization like this, and when you expect and you're paying for a protection or an implied protection, and you don't get it, it's kind of a feeling that leaves you feeling a little bit panicked. And unfortunately, there's several people that are kind of going through that right now.
And just to be clear, in other organizations.
Yes, to be clear, in other organizations. And so when members of our own organization have called me about a similar issue, and I've told them, hey, we got you. You're going to be covered with your admin stuff. You're going to be covered if it goes to a criminal element. Post, we're going to cover you. Don't worry about it. You've already paid for this, and thanks for being a member.
And if it goes to the Court of Appeals, I mean, these are considerable benefits that you guys have. And when you really dig into the nuances of the legal plan, it is astounding. And they told me in the beginning that I needed my head examined, and you too. I mean, when we were there,
you won't survive 6 months.
Yeah, you won't survive 6 months, is what they said 13 years ago.
Yeah,
but it's been, oddly enough, when people are seeing the shortfalls of these competitors, oddly enough, people are looking at the FOP and going, I guess I better put in my application. And just on a local side of, I'm still involved with the Salt Lake City chapter. I've received, just in the past few days, I think 5 to 7 applications of people just wanting to come over and to be covered because of some issues that are going on there. And it's just one of those things that people don't necessarily understand what we've got until you really need it, and then you find out you're like the guy on Indiana Jones. You've chosen wisely or you've chosen poorly. And thank goodness we're the ones standing there saying you've chosen wisely if you find yourself in that situation. And it's way more comforting for me to be able to say, hey, we got you covered, instead of, sorry, bud.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately we've had to say that to some guys that, and here's the typical scenario is somebody will do something, realize, I may have just stepped on a landmine. They contact their lodge president, hey, I want to sign up. So they sign up, and then when either the IA part comes through, it's, okay, the incident happened on what date? And you joined on what date? Yeah. And it's like, hey, I mean, just like if my house is on fire, when the fire department's showing up and hooking up to the hydrant, I'm not on the phone with Farmers Insurance going, hey, I remember you quoted me a policy last year. I'd like to take advantage of that right now. Can you backdate it 24 hours?
Right.
It was the gold standard too.
Yeah. It was a gold standard. I mean, it's a policy that,
it definitely covers this fire. Yeah. I mean,
definitely covers this fire. And then it's there's just one thing. I need you to hurry on that because the house is literally on fire right now. And what are they going to say to me? And it's not fair to the members that have recognized the value and paid into it to then say, okay, you know what, you've been avoiding this, but now because you're in a problematic scenario, it just doesn't work that way. And that is a very hard thing to have to utter to somebody that's going through a crisis of saying, sorry, but you're in a bit of a pickle on this one. Luckily, even with those members, the firm has offered a discounted rate for those that find themselves in a situation.
Absolutely.
It's not free and it's not covered, but
it's reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting a far better defense than what you're paying for, even at that discounted rate. Yeah, you're getting a $500 an hour defense.
The issue isn't so much the cost. It's just that we have to prioritize our FOP members, and I would just apologize to those folks that didn't see clearly enough to join the FOP. If you've called the firm and the firm has been too busy with FOP matters, I mean, it is what it is. But we try to make room for non-members when we can. There is a deal that we give them, but it cannot be a situation where we take a case at the expense of our members. So again, I would encourage you, anyone in the sound of my voice, please tell anybody that you know that has not yet joined to get that application in sooner rather than later. We're at the end of this again. I can't believe it's gone by so fast, but we're short on time because of the very important function that we have to get to, and that's why you look so snazzy today. I wanted to call you Elder Jex with that tie, the way it looks. It's fantastic.
With the goatee.
Well,
Perfectly tied knot, I might add.
Well, I'm gonna let in on a little secret.
Oh, wow.
I haven't tied a tie in 15 years.
Well,
I don't even know if
why
it
would
would
you
have to
need
be
to?
muscle memory. It's perfectly knotted every time.
I love it.
And everything.
It's
But,
snazzy.
as we go, I want to make sure that we give a shout out to the Pod Mill. Thank you, Spencer. This has been a great venture for us to be on. They've got great setup. Everything that they do for us, it's much appreciated. So, thank you to Pod Mill.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. Be safe out there, and as always, we're thinking of you, and we love that you tune in. So do it again. Goodbye.